A couple weeks ago, I released my video ranking all of the features in the 26.2 drop, otherwise known as Chaos Cubed. Overall, I'm a pretty big fan of the update. I've already been using the Cinnabar blocks a ton in A World with Friends, and the Sulfur Cube has been a blast to mess around with. Literally. But while I was making that video, I noticed something kind of odd. I had to get footage of me using the stone cutter on both the sulfur and cinnabar blocks. Both of these block sets are made up of the exact same number and type of blocks. All of them have a polished and brick variant, which along with the normal stone variant can be turned into walls, slabs, and stairs. Then on top of that, there's also an additional chiseled version. Despite the block sets being the same though, when I put them in a stone cutter, I noticed that the order of how the blocks were organized was actually different between the two. The sulfur set started with the polished blocks, but the cinnabar set put those at the bottom. So after seeing that, I thought to myself, what a useless fact.
Say that again?
So then I realized that I somehow never made any videos giving out useless facts for Minecraft, so that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. If you watched my Mario Maker 2 useless facts series from many years ago, you would know that this idea is stolen, inspired by P. Jiggle's useless Smash Facts series over on his channel. Link will be in the description. Essentially, this will cover trivia in Minecraft that's not really helpful in terms of gameplay, but I still find interesting regardless. With Minecraft being a sandbox game, I'm sure you could come up with some very niche uses for some of these, but I tried to keep them as useless as possible. And trust me, we have some facts here that are a lot more interesting and obscure than the one I started this video off with. I say we because about half of the facts today are taken from comments on the community tab. I made a post asking for some useless facts, and you guys really impressed me this time around as you all had a lot of facts that I never even heard of before. So many facts that I wasn't able to fit them all in this video, so if this video does well, I think I could easily turn this into a series. So if you enjoy, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. First things first, I want to take a look at some enchantment facts. Now, enchantments are one of the most useful mechanics in the game. It's how you make your armor and tools much better. But what if you wanted to make them worse? Well, that's where the two curses come in. Now, I'm not going to call these two useless since they do have very specific scenarios where they can come in handy. Like, for example, if you want to be evil and prank your friend by trapping them in a pumpkin forever. Ha! Loser! However, I do think the items you can put these curses on are a bit interesting. In survival mode, you can only use enchantment books on items that allow it, so trying to put sharpness on a green candle, for example, won't work. Devastating, I know. For cursive binding, you can put it on basically everything that allows you to wear it, which makes total sense. However, cursive vanishing's item set gets a bit more bizarre. It is the enchantment that can be put on the most items in the game. In fact, anything that can be enchanted is able to receive cursive vanishing. That makes sense so far, but what's interesting is the fact that there are two items that can only get cursive vanishing as no other enchantment works. Those would be the two compasses. They'll throw an asterisk on the recovery compass. For some reason, you could put cursive vanishing on a compass, which seems super random compared to every other enchantable item in the game. My current theory as to why this is possible has to do with the lodestone. Since a player might use the lodestone to point to their base, they may not want other players to be able to kill them and find where their base is. So instead of having to worry, they could just make the compass vanish upon death. Now, the reason I think this is still useless is because if you're smart enough to think about putting cursive vanishing on a compass, you probably know how to press the F3 button. It's a million times easier and safer to just save your chords than go through the effort of getting cursive vanishing on your compass. With that being said, I think this mechanic might still be slightly more useful than putting it on a recovery compass, which I genuinely have no clue why this is possible. Now, if you try to do this on Java Edition, it won't work. Instead, we have to go to Bedrock Edition. The whole point of the recovery compass is to point to where a player died, and it only works in the hands of the player that died. So having the recovery compass vanish upon death would just be completely pointless. I assume this only exists because the normal compass can get this enchantment, so they probably just copied over the code without thinking. Either way, I think it is pretty useless to put this enchantment on both of these items, so it's funny that Mojang made it possible for these two at all. Sticking with the Bedrock exclusive enchantment stuff, I'm sorry, we'll leave Bedrock Edition soon, I swear. Shears are able to get an additional enchantment here. On Java Edition, they can be equipped with efficiency, unbreaking, and mending, which makes total sense. Oh yeah, and vanishing. However, on Bedrock, they can also be enchanted with Silk Touch. Now that might sound useful, but there's really no reason to do this. All of the blocks shears help with mining are already dropped as if you use Silk Touch to get them. Leaves and cobwebs only require that you're using shears, so enchanting makes no difference here. Cobwebs did used to require Silk Touch, but that was changed back in 1.9, so I assume this is just a leftover in Bedrock Edition. Now this can technically be useful for silk touching blocks like glass or grass, which don't require a tool to mine, but I think you'd be better off using your Silk Touch book on literally any other tool. Speaking of enchanting in books, I think it's time for our first comment fact of the day. Unlike my nitpick videos, I think it makes more sense to go back and forth between my facts and the comments instead of doing all of mine first and then all of the ones from the post. So to start us off, we have one from Dusk Amethyst who says, in the original Minecraft Essential Handbook, it says that enchanted arrows can be obtained from skeletons, despite enchanted arrows never having existed. The Minecraft Essential Handbooks are some of the most popular pieces of outside media related to Minecraft. I know I had all 4 when I was younger, and I even made the first one on my Tomodachi Life Island. These were really cool as they provided a lot of information about the game, along with tips and pretty visuals. However, some pieces of information were lies. As stated in the comment, under the skeleton section of the first handbook, it says that it has a chance to drop enchanted arrows. Enchanted arrows do not exist in the game, unless you use creative mode to make your own. My guess is that the person making the book misunderstood what was meant by the skeleton being able to drop enchanted bows, but it's funny that they went through the effort of including an enchanted arrow graphic as well. While on the topic of these books, I actually had a fact of my own that I got before reading the comments. For many of the mobs, the book lists ways the players can go about defeating them. This is especially the case in the combat book, seeing as that is the entire point of it existing. Under the Iron Golem section though, it lists its weaknesses as lava, drowning, and fall damage. Lava of course is correct, seeing as nearly every iron farm ever uses it to work, but the other 2 are wrong. The Iron Golem is actually one of the few mobs in Minecraft that are immune to drowning and fall damage. You can keep an Iron Golem locked underwater for as long as you want, and he'll live forever. The Iron Golem did used to be able to drown, but that was removed back in 1.2, long before these books ever came out. Ever since I first read these, that lie has stuck in my mind, and I've been looking for a good excuse to mention it in a video. Honestly, there are a lot of errors in these books, so let me know if you want to see a video of me correcting all the issues I can find. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I'll keep it to just these 2 mistakes for now though. I don't want to keep us away from the actual game of Minecraft for too long. Anyway, let's get back to killing things. Minecraft's death messages are an incredibly iconic part of the game. Depending on how the player dies, a different message will pop up in the chat explaining the death. There are of course pretty common ones, like player fell from a high place for fall damage, and player was slain by mob for most mob deaths, but there are also quite a few that are extremely obscure or basically impossible to get. I decided to pick out a few to highlight for this video, starting with probably the most popular one being player walked into the danger zone due to blank. This appears when the player gets hit by a mob and then dies to a magma block. It even got kinda updated recently thanks to the sulfur cube. Since you could put a magma block in one to deal damage, a new death message was created saying, player died because not just the floor is lava. This is a lot closer to the normal magma block death message saying, player discovered the floor was lava. There's actually another sulfur cube death message though, and it's pretty obscure since it's unobtainable as far as I can tell, and it only appears in the 26.3 snapshots. If a player dies to a magma block sulfur cube while the sulfur cube is holding a named item, you'll get a death message that reads death.attack.sulfurcubehot.item. Obviously, this is a completely bugged message and isn't really meant to be seen. I mean, it's impossible to even give a sulfur cube a held item anyway outside of commands, so it's funny that this death message exists at all. The sulfur cube isn't the only mob to get a hold item death message though. Normally these item death messages are meant for when a mob like a zombie picks up a named sword and then kills the player with it. I always thought this was a really cute detail, even if it's not super important. However, as we just saw with the sulfur cube, several mobs got death messages like this despite not being able to pick up items at all. Our next example of this are bees. They have a unique death message that says, player was stung to death. But if the bee is spawned in with commands to hold an item, it will say, player was stung to death by bee using item. Same thing also goes for the warden and wither, whose item death messages will read, player was obliterated by a sonically charged shriek while trying to escape warden wielding item, and player was shot by a skull from wither using item. I just think it's kind of interesting that they went through the effort of making these death messages despite them not being possible to see in survival mode. To be fair though, those are just spin-off messages from from other deaths that can naturally occur. Our next death message though can't be seen in game at all and isn't similar to any other death message. This one goes, player was pummeled by mob, which would appear when the player died by getting hit by either a snowball, egg, or ender pearl. Now the reason you can't see this message in game is because none of those items deal damage to the player. I do want to specify the player though, as you can actually pummel a specific mob to death. The blaze actually does take damage from snowballs, so if you kill a blaze using the item, then that's the death message they'll receive. Sadly, we can't see this message in game, but according to the wiki, if it was a named blaze that died, then this message would be sent to the game's logs. So I wonder if this death message was created due to blazes, or if it's just meant to be a failsafe in case a player somehow manages to be so terrible that they die to a snowball. For our last death message, I want to highlight another one that doesn't apply to the player, but this one is actually possible to see in game. Several mobs will suffocate if they're taken out of the water since they're meant to be aquatic. So stuff like different fish types, axolotls, dolphins, and nautili have a unique message for when this happens, reading, mob died from dehydration. If the mob was attacked before dying, this will instead read, mob died from dehydration while trying to escape blank. The reason we're able to see these messages in game is thanks to the Nautilus. While we can't normally see the death messages for mobs, tamed mobs will actually display their death for their owner. Since the Nautilus can be tamed, we can get it to love us, then murder it in cold blood to finally see this message. Again, it's really cool to see Mojang create death messages for super niche scenarios like this. While we're on the topic of the Nautilus, another comment fact comes from Michael Gawk who said, another Michael, who says, the Nautilus shell is one of the only items you can put in your offhand in Bedrock Edition, even though it doesn't do anything. Yeah, we're going back to Bedrock Edition. While the offhand does exist in this version, for some reason, you can't put every item in it, unlike the Java Edition. Instead, it's limited to very specific items. Most of these have to do with combat, being the shield, arrows, fireworks, and the Totem of Undying. Maps are also able to be placed in the offhand due to how much easier they make exploring to have them on screen. All of those items have special uses when they're in the offhand, so if there was going to be a limited amount, it makes sense for those all to be here. And then you could just put the Nautilus shell too. The shells have no extra use when held in the offhand, so it makes the decision to include them in this exclusive group very bizarre. I would have been totally lost as to why Mojang did this had it not been for a reply by Turtley Liam 9137. They explained that this was likely added since drowns hold Nautilus shells in their offhand too. So sure, I guess it makes sense that it would be added for the player too then, but this is still definitely a super weird quirk with how Bedrock Edition's offhand works. Hopefully one day it'll just get the Java version. That's not the only fact I have about the Bedrock drowns though, as I also wanted to include something cool I discovered in a previous video. In Bedrock Edition, drowns have a unique swimming animation compared to Java. That's already pretty neat by itself, but I think the thing that makes it really interesting is when you try putting a drowned in a boat. Instead of sitting in it like any other mob, it'll look like the drowned is hanging off the back of the boat and trying to climb in. I honestly think that is much cooler than how they look in Java, since it fits with them trying to climb aboard to kill the player. But as I was getting footage, I found out they removed this. Honestly, I wish both versions of Minecraft used the old animation instead of it being removed entirely. It was such a cool detail, even if it was likely unintentional. Unfortunately though, this isn't the only recent Bedrock exclusive feature removal that I think was for the worst. Back in my structure ranking, I mentioned that buried treasure chests have much different loot in Bedrock Edition than they do in Java Edition. In addition to some of the items that can be found in the Java Edition chests, Bedrock treasure chests also contain name tags, chainmail armor, books and quills, leads, bottles of enchanting, potions of regeneration, cake, and most interestingly of all, the music discs Mellow High and Wait. I always thought it was really cool that these two got put into the buried treasure loot table, since normally the only C418 discs that spawn inside of structures are Cat and 13. Giving different structures different discs could have been a really fun idea, and while they do seem to be doing that with some of the newer discs, most of the old discs are still only obtainable through the skeleton killing a creeper method. Unfortunately, as I said, all of these items no longer spawn in Bedrock Edition's buried treasure chest as of the Mounts of Mayhem drop. I kinda wish the opposite happened here, with Java Edition changing to match Bedrock's old loot. The items in the buried treasure chest right now do make sense, but I think there was something special about being able to get discs here too. Speaking of C418's music, we have the fact from the comment section that surprised me the most. A lot of the comment facts I did know about, but forgot to include on my own list, so they still acted as good reminders. But this next one, I genuinely had no idea about. quote. It comes from vman776, who says, C418's creative mode song, Haunt Muskie, is an anagram for Hatsune Miku, and even he doesn't know why he did that. If you take the name of the song I have playing in the background right now and rearrange the letters, it spells out Hatsune Miku.
Have you heard of Hatsune Miku?
For those of you that don't know who Hatsune Miku is, she is a very popular Vocaloid model, which is used for singing songs. Hatsune Miku herself is so popular that she even appeared in numerous different things like Fortnite and Sonic Racing Cross World, alongside Minecraft Steve and Alex themselves. Oh, and she's also in Domino's App, featuring Hatsune Miku. Despite all of this, I was not expecting there to be a reference to her in Minecraft itself, even if plenty of other IPs have been referenced, like Mario and Adventure Time. The anagram isn't a coincidence either, as C418 himself said that he named the song intentionally as an anagram to Hatsune Miku. Funnily enough though, he doesn't even remember why he did this, at least according to the website. It's not like the song uses Hatsune Miku, and in his post, the song seems more based around an old game he used to play. So even if the reference doesn't really make sense or seem to mean anything, Hatsune Miku is indeed referenced in the base game of Minecraft. Speaking of developer insight, I don't know, man. We have a comment from GreenIce0222 who says, string was added as a drop for Striders specifically because people asked how pigeons were able to make crossbows in universe. Pigeons are supposed to be piglins, by the way. But yeah, on the Minecraft website article announcing the Strider, it was stated that the Striders were made to drop string to explain how piglins are able to craft crossbows. I think it's kinda cool how Mojang thought about this little bit of lore, and it makes the Nether feel like a more cohesive world. More importantly though, as I was doing research to confirm this fact, I came across another piece of trivia on the Strider's wiki page. Apparently, the Strider was originally referred to internally as the Derpatron. It's so peak. Anyway, for another crafting one, I want to talk about a feature that was removed from the game, but I always thought was really funny when it did exist. Cut sandstone is a block type that I don't really think about much, since it's a bit of a weird in-between block for normal sandstone and the smooth sandstone. Really the most interesting thing about it in the game for me today is the fact that cut sandstone, cut red sandstone, and smooth stone are the only blocks in the game to get a slab variant, but not a staircase. Honestly, it's a bit surprising that the cut blocks have a slab at all, but that's not the fact I wanted to talk about. Initially, cut sandstone was actually named smooth sandstone before smooth sandstone became its own block in 1.13. I'm gonna keep referring to the block as cut sandstone for the sake of clarity here, but at the time of this feature, it was technically named smooth sandstone. Anyway, before the 1.8 update, cut sandstone could be used to craft cut sandstone. By putting 4 cut sandstone in the crafting table, you would be given 4 cut sandstone. So if you really wanted to, you could sit and craft the same cut sandstone into itself forever, never losing or gaining anything in the process. That was something I discovered way back when I was playing survival mode in older versions, and I always thought it was a bit of a tragedy that they patched this, even if it does make a lot of sense to remove it. Anyway, we'll do one more cut feature fact for this episode. I don't want all of this episode to be old oddities because I could definitely talk about those all day, so I'll save some of the others for a potential second episode if this does well. Remember to like and subscribe! Anyway, this comment fact comes from Flaming Paper Zero, who says, in the first 1.6 snapshot, the horse saddle was added before being removed later, and to date, it is the only item to have a max stack size of 32. Now, I did know about the horse saddle before this, as I talked about it back in my Minecraft cut features video. Essentially, instead of using a regular saddle to ride a horse, you would have to use specifically the horse saddle, which would be crafted using 5 leather and 3 iron. Now, obviously this was removed because we already had the normal saddle, so it was a bit redundant to have both. I don't think the horses minded too much anyway. What I didn't know about this though was the second half of the comment. I didn't realize that horse saddles could stack at all, let alone stacking to its own exclusive value with 32. We of course have some items in the game that only stack up to 16, but to this day, the horse saddle would have been the only one to stop at 32. I really wonder why they even made that decision in the first place. It seems like such an odd but deliberate choice. As for another useless horse fact, a couple months ago, Mojang released the zombie horse cape to go alongside the Mounts of Mayhem drop. To get it, players had to kill 5 mobs using a spear in Bedrock survival mode within the dates of December 12th and December 15th. Oddly enough though, despite me doing just that, I was never given the zombie horse cape. I followed the instructions perfectly and on time, but Mojang just didn't give me the cape. Isn't that a weird fact? Well, while we're talking about errors, let's take a look at the Pillager Outpost. This one is fairly well known, but if you look at the top corners of the roof, you may notice that one of these isn't like the others. For whatever reason, one of the corners is missing 2 blocks right here and here that all of the other corners have. If you don't know about this, the pillager outpost looks perfectly symmetrical, but good luck not staring at the corner now that you know about it. Those that know, those that don't. Another weird inconsistency, though I'm not fully sure if it's an error, comes from the bucket items. There are a ton of things you can put in a bucket in Minecraft, such as different liquids and certain aquatic mobs. However, if you look at all of the bucket textures side by side, you may notice something a bit strange. All of the buckets with mobs inside start their texture 1 pixel lower than the normal liquid buckets. I've heard some people say that maybe it's to show that the animal buckets are heavier, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. Especially since if that were the case, I think the water bucket should be a bit lower than the normal bucket, considering it's holding about a ton of water. Another explanation could be the fact that mobs like the axolotl and brand new sulfur cube needed that extra pixel of space to finish the design. While that does make a bit of sense, there's nothing stopping Mojang from moving the normal bucket textures down to match with the mobs. So either way, this just ends up being a really weird inconsistency. Hey, speaking of fish, I want to highlight another thing I discovered while doing research for a previous video. If you put a tropical fish in a bucket, you'll be able to see what type of fish you caught while hovering over the bucket in your inventory. That's pretty helpful due to the fact that 3,072 different tropical fish variants spawn naturally in the world. A lot of the time, the name you see will just be the color and model type of the fish. However, there are 26 common fish combinations that receive actual names based on real-world fish. Those are the anemone, black tang, cichlid, clownfish, cotton candy betta, dottyback, emperor red snapper, goatfish, moorish idol, parrotfish, red cichlid, red lip blenny, red snapper, threadfin, and triggerfish. Now, if you were paying attention, you may notice that I only listed 15 names. What about the others? Well, this is another case of Java and Bedrock Edition having really weird differences. Each version by itself only has 22 named fish, meaning there are some strange differences between the 11 fish models we have left. The queen angelfish is the simplest difference, as it only has a space added between angel and fish on Bedrock Edition, whereas Java keeps it as one word. From what I could tell in my extensive research, the Java edition seems to be correct here. The ornate butterfly fish, as it was named on Java Edition, was changed to just the ornate butterfly on Bedrock. Again, it seems like Java has the correct name. Very similar story with the yellowtail parrotfish, which also just removes the fish part of the name on Bedrock Edition. The butterfly fish is a bit more interesting. Not only does it have the weird space discrepancy again, but each version of the game gives this to 2 different fish models. Java applies the name to the white-gray clayfish, while Bedrock applies the name to the white-gray brinley. The yellow tang has the same name between both versions, but this once again is applied to 2 different models of fish, as Java gives it to the yellow flopper, while Bedrock gives it to the yellow stripey. The tomato clownfish on Java Edition is a red-white cob, but on Bedrock Edition, they instead got the tomato clown as a red-white sunstreak. Finally, each version of the game also got their own exclusive fish, with Java getting the blue tang, whereas Bedrock got the blue dory. So yeah, the tropical fish names are a bit of a mess between both versions. It's already a pretty cool fact that some of these have names, but it's so weird that there are so many minor differences between versions like this. But I think it's almost time we wrap up this first episode, so let's do one more fact from the comments and one more fact from me. So starting with our last comment fact, we have Owain587 who says, "There's a very small chance for the game's title to be misspelt as Minceraft on the title screen." I have known about this fact for a very long time, so I think it's fair to spread it around to more people. As the comment says, there is a 1 in 10,000 chance that the title screen will spell out Minceraft instead of Minecraft when you boot up the game. This is just meant to be a cute little Easter egg, but I've been trying to keep my eye open for it ever since I first found out about this. It's very likely that many of you watching this video have gotten this rare Easter egg and never even noticed due to how small it is. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if I got it and just clicked past it without realizing. As for my final fact, I want to go back into the game itself and talk about maps. On a map, different blocks will display as different colors that theoretically match with their texture better. There are currently 62 available color types that can display on a map, some with a lot more blocks than others. Stone blocks obviously fall under the stone category, which is a dark gray and fits them quite well. However, despite the texture not changing, infested stone blocks do not share the same color as they actually match with clay blocks. This color is instead a bit of a lighter gray than the normal stone blocks. So if you have both of them next to each other on a map, you can see which are normal stone and which ones are the imposters. I first found this out while watching an episode of Hermitcraft, and I think it's a really strange detail. I'm not even sure if it's intentional, since normal and infested deep slate appear to be the same color as each other on a map. So this fact is exclusive to just the stone blocks. Definitely a really weird detail, but I thought it was pretty interesting, and also a useless fact. But anyways, that's it for this video. Are you obsessed with putting Nautilus shells in your offhand and hate me for calling it useless? Let me know in the comments. I had a ton of fun with this video. I love random trivia like this, and going on the hunt for more facts was really enjoyable. I only went through about half of the facts I collected as well, so I certainly have enough for a part 2 at some point if you're all interested in that. But before I go, I've got to thank my members being Kumo Yusei, Harvey Corbett, Mr. G, Annis118, RKJD3930, Patrick Gast, Expired Crazy Person, Maidzio2, JJW Gamerboy, The Shin Smash, Nuclear, Doodle Dog 222, Aaron0729, The Cool Man, Lapox14, Megalamari, Danny Gaming Central, Lucy V Uwu, The Silent 123, Windows Vista's fan-made content, Genie VV Yoso, Wyatt Derpy, Leonard Von Hevering, Starfly, Disco Fama, Cassie Channel, Drop D Mike 75, Virtual Tomato, Daniel Castillo 1262, Anton 3669, Smuggy, Guy 112, Young Smoky VP7, Zach Pro, Flame 765, Peanut Brown of Gallery, Gorpasaurus, BFDI Macaron, Stephen Hafner, Night Vision 101, PDX, Wilbur, Mogo Boat, Stuffy Ant, Rich229, Jehojim, Magnus and Larslot, Trifector, Tibby, Hippopotamus, Levi Strux, Blessed Tiger, Yanni the Duck, Trader Mo, Mevins 2001, Display Changer, B Major 2003, Sir Musty, Belandor, Cinder CC, Jade Avery, Thicky Reiki, Ungenio TM, Tesseract, JubeTube, Jameson Pageson, Zfrost Keep, and Christian Flattery Sequel Edition. But anyways, dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.